Welcome to Infidelity HQ. I want to sincerely appreciate you, my viewers, most especially my subscribers, for your unwavering support as we keep improving and bringing daily told and untold true infidelity crime stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you are yet to do so. The grand colonial-style house stood in the quiet suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. To the outside world, it was a home filled with love, stability, and wealth. Inside, however, the walls whispered secrets, secrets that would soon turn deadly. David Kensington was a man of power, charm, and deception. A successful real estate developer in his late 40s, he had everything a man could want: a beautiful wife, a son in college, and a reputation built on years of hard work. But David had always wanted more. His hunger for excitement led him down a path of betrayal, one that would soon spiral into something he never anticipated. His wife, Linda, was the picture of elegance. She was strong-willed, graceful, and deeply devoted to her family. Though she was 10 years younger than David, she had a maturity that balanced his impulsive nature. Yet despite her devotion, she had begun to sense a shift in her husband's behavior. Late-night meetings, sudden trips, a coldness in his touch. Then there was Margaret Kensington, David's aging mother. Once a lively woman, old age had stolen her strength, confining her to a wheelchair. She lived in a private guest house on the property, requiring round-the-clock care, and that was where she met Olivia. Olivia Monroe was the kind of woman who turned heads. Young, stunning, and full of life, she had been working as Margaret's caregiver for 6 months. She was kind, intelligent, and had a quiet, mysterious charm that made her hard to ignore. To everyone, she was simply doing her job, tending to Margaret with patience and warmth. But behind closed doors, Olivia was tangled in an affair with the man of the house, David. What started as stolen glances quickly became something much more dangerous. The thrill of secrecy only fueled their passion. David found in Olivia what he no longer saw in his wife: youth, desire, and the rush of something forbidden. Olivia, on the other hand, saw David as her ticket to a better life. He promised her things she wanted to believe. But Linda was not a fool. She felt the distance between her and her husband, the way his eyes lingered elsewhere. She had seen the way Olivia moved around the house, how David's presence made her tense. And so, with growing suspicion, she decided to dig deeper. Linda Kensington had always prided herself on her intuition. A woman didn't stay married to a man like David for 20 years without learning how to read between the lines. She knew something was wrong. The distance between them wasn't just the natural drift of a long marriage. It was something else, something darker. One evening, after David had left for a supposed late meeting, Linda decided to confirm her suspicions. She went through his phone while he was in the shower earlier that day, but he had been careful. No incriminating texts, no emails, nothing obvious. But she knew how to look deeper. David's car had a GPS tracking system. It was a safety feature they had installed years ago, something he had likely forgotten about. She pulled it up on her tablet and watched as the little blinking dot moved, not toward his office downtown, but toward a small apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. Olivia's address. Linda's hands tightened around the device, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't just being paranoid. It was real. He was cheating on her, with the young woman she had allowed into their home, into their lives. That night when David returned, she watched him. He walked in, kissed her cheek absent-mindedly, and poured himself a drink. The scent of another woman's perfume clung to him. It made Linda sick. "Long meeting?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. "Yeah, ran over," he said, loosening his tie. "You know how it is." She forced a smile, though anger burned in her gut. Of course, but she wasn't going to let it slide. The next day, Linda made an unannounced visit to Olivia's apartment. She had no plan, just rage and betrayal coursing through her veins. She knocked hard, and after a few moments, the door opened. Olivia stood there, her hair slightly messy, her lips parted in surprise. For a moment, they just stared at each other. "Mrs. Kensington," Olivia said, forcing a polite smile. Linda pushed past her into the small apartment, scanning the room. A jacket, David's, was draped over a chair. His cologne lingered in the air. "How long?" Linda asked, her voice cold. Olivia hesitated. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult me." Linda turned to face her. "How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" Olivia swallowed hard, but before she could respond, the sound of a door opening down the hall made Linda's heart stop. David stepped out of the bedroom. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Linda laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Wow," she whispered, shaking her head. "You didn't even try to hide it." David sighed, rubbing his face. "Linda." "No," she snapped. "You don't get to explain this away." Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had never felt rage like this before. Pure, blinding fury. She wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt her. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, guilt flickering across her face. "I never meant—" Linda turned on her. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Don't you dare act like some innocent victim." David took a step toward her. "Linda, please, let's talk about this." She stared at him, at the man she had given her life to. And in that moment, something inside her broke. "There's nothing left to talk about," she said. Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her. The days after Linda's discovery were filled with silence. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't pack a suitcase and storm out like David expected. Instead, she carried herself with an eerie calmness that made him uneasy. David moved back into their home as if nothing had happened. But the weight of his affair with Olivia loomed over them like a storm cloud. Olivia, too, became distant, avoiding his calls and keeping her distance. Something about the way Linda had looked at her that day haunted her. It was a look that said, "You will pay for this." Then one night, everything changed. It was late, past midnight, when the police received a 911 call. A woman's voice, frantic and breathless. "There's been a murder." By the time officers arrived at the Kensington estate, the house was silent. The grand entryway was dimly lit, and the air smelled of something metallic. In the living room, sprawled on the floor in a pool of blood, lay Linda Kensington. The scene was brutal. Deep stab wounds to the chest, defensive wounds on her hands. It was clear she had fought for her life. David stood nearby, his shirt stained with blood, his face pale. I found her like this," he stammered. His hands trembled as he pointed toward the back door. "It was open when I came in. Someone must have broken in." The officers took in the scene, noting the shattered vase on the coffee table, the signs of struggle. But there was no sign of forced entry. And then there was Olivia. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock, her hands gripping the edges of her coat. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What happened?" One of the officers turned to her. "Miss, how do you know the Kensingtons?" She hesitated. I work here. I'm Margaret's caregiver." The officer nodded but kept his eyes on her, noting the nervous energy in her posture. "And why are you here this late?" Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it. She glanced at David, who avoided her gaze. I just came to talk to David," she finally said. The room fell into a heavy silence. The crime scene investigators arrived shortly after, carefully examining the house, the body, and the surrounding areas. The officers took statements from both David and Olivia, but something didn't sit right. David claimed he had gone out for a late drive to clear his head and returned to find Linda dead. Olivia insisted she had only just arrived, but neither of them had a solid alibi. And then there was Margaret Kensington. The old woman sat in her wheelchair in the guest house, watching the commotion from her window. When an officer approached her, she simply smiled and said, "Secrets have a way of catching up to people, don't they?" The murder of Linda Kensington sent shockwaves through the wealthy Atlanta suburb. News stations broadcasted the brutal killing, reporters camped outside the Kensington estate, and the police worked tirelessly to piece together the truth. But truth, as it often is, was buried beneath layers of lies. David was the prime suspect. The police didn't buy his story. He claimed he had gone out for a drive, but security cameras in the neighborhood failed to show his car leaving the area. His timeline was shaky, and his reaction at the crime scene seemed too controlled, too rehearsed. Then there was Olivia. She had arrived at the house minutes after the murder. She claimed it was a coincidence. The detectives didn't believe in coincidences. One detective, a seasoned investigator named Detective Harris, had seen cases like this before. Messy affairs, hidden betrayals, and violent endings. He sat across from David in the interrogation room, studying the man's every twitch, every hesitation. "You expect me to believe," Harris said, leaning forward, "that you just happened to take a drive, and while you were gone, someone broke into your house and murdered your wife?" David ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I know how it looks, but I swear, I didn't kill Linda." "Did you love her?" David hesitated. "Of course I did." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Then why were you sleeping with Olivia Monroe?" David swallowed hard. "That had nothing to do with this." "Doesn't it?" Harris slid a folder across the table. "Because right now it looks like you had motive. Your wife found out about the affair. Maybe she threatened to leave, take everything. Maybe things got heated. Maybe you lost control." David shook his head. "Number I would never, but Olivia would." David's head snapped up. "What?" Harris leaned back. "See, here's what's interesting. We checked Olivia's phone records. She called you 5 times the night of the murder. You didn't answer. We also found out that Linda made an appointment with a divorce lawyer that morning." David's stomach dropped. He hadn't known that. "You see where I'm going with this?" Harris continued. "Linda was planning to leave you. Maybe Olivia found out. Maybe she was afraid you'd go back to your wife. Maybe she decided to take matters into her own hands." David shook his head. "Number Olivia, she wouldn't." "Wouldn't she?" Harris smirked. "Because we also found something else." He nodded at an officer who entered the room holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a knife, its blade stained dark with dried blood. David's breath caught in his throat. "We found this in Olivia's apartment," Harris said. "Guess whose blood it is?" David felt the walls closing in. Olivia had told him she loved him. Had she killed for him? Had he just fallen into a trap he never saw coming? David sat frozen in the interrogation room, his mind racing. The knife, found in Olivia's apartment, had Linda's blood on it. But something didn't add up. He knew Olivia. She was ambitious, manipulative even, but a murderer. Could she have really done it? Meanwhile, Olivia was in another room, her hands trembling as she faced Detective Harris. The evidence was stacked against her, and she knew it. "I didn't kill her," she whispered. "You have to believe me." Harris leaned in, his voice calm but firm. "Then explain the knife." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. I I don't know how it got there. Someone must have planted it." "Who?" "I don't know." She ran a hand through her hair. "I love David, yes, but I wouldn't kill for him." Harris narrowed his eyes. "Did you know Linda was planning to divorce him?" Olivia hesitated. "No." "You're lying." She bit her lip. "Okay, I suspected, but I didn't do anything." Harris sighed. "Here's the thing, Olivia. Either you did it or someone is framing you. So if you're innocent, you better start talking." And then Olivia said something that changed everything. "Check Margaret's security cameras." Harris frowned. "What?" "The old lady, David's mother, she has cameras around her guest house. She watches everything." Olivia's voice shook. "If someone else did this, she might have seen it." Harris wasted no time. Within an hour, his team retrieved the footage from Margaret's security system, and what they found turned the case on its head. The video showed Linda in the living room that night. Then a shadow moved behind her. The figure was not Olivia. It was Margaret Kensington. The detectives watched in stunned silence as the elderly woman, frail but determined, rolled toward Linda in her wheelchair. A flash of silver, then a struggle. Linda's scream was silent in the grainy footage, and then she collapsed. Margaret wiped the knife with a cloth and slowly rolled away, her face expressionless. Harris turned to one of his officers. "Go get her." Minutes later, Margaret was brought into the station, calm as ever. She sat in her wheelchair looking almost amused. Harris placed a photo from the footage in front of her. "Care to explain this?" Margaret sighed. "That woman was going to take everything from my son. She was going to leave him, destroy his life. I couldn't let that happen." David, watching from the other room, felt his stomach turn. Mom, he whispered. Margaret turned her cold gaze toward the one-way mirror. You were always weak, David. Always too soft. You couldn't handle this, so I did it for you. David stumbled back, his mother's words sinking in. It wasn't Olivia. It wasn't him. It was the person he had trusted the most. Margaret Kensington was charged with first-degree murder. David and Olivia walked free, but nothing would ever be the same. David's reputation was shattered, his marriage destroyed, and Olivia disappeared from his life, leaving him alone with his mother's sins. As he stood outside the police station that night, he realized the truth. Infidelity had started this chain of events. But in the end, it wasn't love or jealousy that killed Linda. It was a mother's twisted devotion.